Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another YouTube video. I'm Ketan. I call myself that day-to-day guy, and the reason behind that is because I'm just a normal guy living his life and sharing some of my experiences here on YouTube. And I've been doing this since February this year, I think it is. But today's video is called How Would You Like to Be Remembered? And interesting one. It's an interesting topic because I think when I was younger, how I wanted people to perceive me was very different to how I am now. So I'm 48 years old in a few weeks, so almost 50, pushing 50. And the way I think now is very different to the way I used to think when I was younger. When I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, I want to have a nice house, nice car, be cool and all that malarkey. And I am none of those things. But I've got a relatively nice house, got a relatively nice car, and this thought first sparked off years ago when I was in Windsor and being introduced in amongst a group of people, and a lady introduced me to her friend as the guy with a nice car. He's got the baby blue Porsche, and I thought to myself, man, is this how I want to be known? Like, it's cool for ego, but at that moment I said to me, I kind of like jokingly dismissed it. I said, no, I said, ignore that. Like I said, I'm Ketan, I'm me. Kind of made a little joke out of it, because to take attention away from like what I own isn't who I am, if that makes sense. It's not a thought I ever would have thought about when I was younger, and now more so than ever. But a couple of things happened last weekend, and hence I said at the end of my last video I want to talk about this. So I'm just sharing this again because this is my personal experience, and as my personal view as well, in terms of what I want to be remembered for and how I want to be perceived by people. And I will never change myself or my personality to suit other people, but if I was to give them a choice of how I'd like to be remembered, this is sort of sparked from there. So we were at a restaurant last Friday night and giving our order. I took my friend Tara out for her birthday dinner, and a Mediterranean restaurant in Bray. Lovely place, but it's quite quiet. So the waiter comes over, he's taking our order, and at the end of the order, I'm looking down, I'm just kind of thinking if there's anything else, and he says, so how's the videos coming along? And I was like, what the yeah. I looked up at him and I said, huh? And he said, oh, I follow you on social media. I said, oh, cool. And then we had this long, beautiful chat. It was so nice that we had this like random interaction with this complete stranger. He's an Indian guy from India, and we were talking about we were talking about the corruption in politics in India, and making a difference to your community, etc., which is something I'm super passionate about. Whilst I do give money to charitable causes, I like more making a personal difference myself within my community. And if there were more people that did that everywhere, the world would be a better place, etc., etc. But anyway, we had such a nice chat, and it really kind of was a nice thing to hear. Not, how's your car, or, all that stuff, like cars, watches, whatnot. That's stuff that, I've said this before, that's stuff I do for me, But that's not how I want to be remembered, and that's not why we're here, That's all good and well, that's all part of the journey, but I want to have a bit more of a lasting, meaningful impact. And then the next evening we were out at a friend's 50th birthday party, and then a friend of mine, we've been friends for quite some time, but I've never actually met her daughter. Her daughter's just turned 18. She was 19 years old anyway, going into university, and we were having a nice chat about life, etc. And she was getting involved with chats about music, and I was talking to her stepdad, who I'm friends with, about painting cars and whatnot, and something about time came up, and I kind of looked at my watch, and then she said, well, that's such an old man thing to do. Anyway, the topic of watches came up. I said, well, listen, this is how you tell the time, Normally I look at my phone, but the watch is correct today, so I looked at my watch, and then she said, is it a Rolex? And I kind of just brushed that aside, and I was like, anyway, change the topic of conversation. I don't necessarily like to influence younger people into being materialistic. Not to say I'm materialistic, but that's the reason why I brushed that off. Anyway, at the end of the night, said our goodbyes and whatnot, and my friend, she texted me, she said, she said, Izzy said in the car she wants to be like you when she's older. And she was like, what, you mean a man? And she said, obviously not. I said, obviously, not obviously. But she says, no, I just want to be an all-round nice person with a Rolex. And I thought to myself, that's such a nice, a nice observation for someone to make about you. On one side it was an observation, because obviously I'm not always nice, and that's just me being human. But that was another thing that happened. And then the following day, it was just a weekend of this stuff. Following day, we had like a memorial for my uncle that passed away a year ago. So it was at a temple in Wembley, and my dad and I got there. We sat down to one side, and my sister-in-law walks in. Brother was away. Sister-in-law walks in with two of the kids. My nephew was playing football, and I kind of summoned summoned the little one over. She came over straight away. She sat on my lap for a bit, lovely chat or whatever, and then she went off to her granddad, and the older one came over. And then I was having a chat with my sister-in-law, and I was just saying to her that I felt guilty that the last time that the kids came over for a sleepover, I had a flat tire on my car, and that stressed me out so much that when we got back home, we went out to Pizza Express to eat, and we couldn't go because the tire was flat, so we came back home and ended up ordering pizza. But anyway, the whole evening my mind was just focused on getting this car sorted, because the next day then I'd have to drop them home, and it was just a whole hoo-ha in my head. And I wasn't really present when the kids were around, and I like to be present. But anyway, I said to my sister-in-law, it's been bugging me, so I apologised to the girls before I had this chat with my sister-in-law. The girls were oblivious. They were like, what? Huh? No, it was fine. We had fun, But in my mind, that was, playing on my mind. And then when I spoke to my sister-in-law about this, she said, we're so happy that the kids have this good relationship with you that, we don't have to say, go and say hello to Uncle Ketan. They voluntarily come running, and she said it's nice that they have, that influence in their life. And that, again, was a super nice thing to hear. Nothing to do, none of these things so far are anything to do with possessions or anything materialistic. Following day, I'm dropping off some cleaning in Windsor to the dry cleaners, and I get out, and a lady's walking past, and she says, oh, you're Ketan. I said, yeah, and I recognised her. I said, oh, hey, it's Sue. And then we had a little chat. We're just friends on Facebook, because I'm a bit of a busybody in Facebook. And she was just so lovely. She said, so nice to meet you. I really find you funny, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's arguable, I know. But she said, she said one of the nicest things about you is you're so kind to everyone. And again, she's got a blinkered view. I am kind. And I'm very bad at accepting compliments, so I kind of, jokingly brushed it off somewhat. But it was just nice to hear someone notice a trait like that, And this is what kind of sparked this video. Like, how are you going to be remembered, And these actions you take today fundamentally affect how you're going to be remembered. So what are you doing to affect that, And it doesn't. And I'm not talking about changing your personality so that when you die, people like you. That's a bit stupid and kind of defies the point of life. But just something to think about, There was one other interaction, and it's completely set my mind now. But you get the picture, right? I think I'm finally getting to a point where I'm being liked for the things I want to be liked for, A bad example of this is when you have a pretty girl and nobody notices anything about her personality. Obviously, I'm not a pretty boy, so I can't really relate to that. Nobody, is always amazed by how handsome I am. But I can imagine what it's like if you're a good-looking woman and people don't notice your personality, and you're like, listen, I'm more than my looks. And I guess in my instance, I'm more than my possessions. Not that my possessions are exceedingly crazy, but you get the picture, right? I just want to be liked for my personality traits rather than anything else. So, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. So I will say, as usual, thank you for watching. And over the next few months, we're going to be more indoor stuff. So I don't know what kind of content I'm going to be bringing, but I booked a trip to India next year, in March. And I've got a few other things planned. And car content might take a bit of a backseat, pardon the pun. But yeah, we'll see. I must be on my 45th or 46th video now, I think, and just every single week continuing this YouTube journey. And if you've been along for the whole thing, then thank you. I hope some of what I say, makes a difference to people. So yeah, ciao for now.